Hello, everybody, and welcome to Star Trek New Worlds. I nearly said Lost Stars there for a second. Star Trek New Worlds, that's us here today. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tony. If you're joining us live, thank you so much for joining us live. If you're catching us on the replay, then thank you for taking the time. If this is something that you like, then please feel free to hit a thumbs up just to help the algorithm say we like this stuff. And if this is something that you keep returning to, then please consider subscribing. But if you're brand new here, you're probably wondering, Tony, what in the world is Star Trek New Worlds? Well, Star Trek New Worlds is a 4X turn-based strategy game that we play online with you using the Amarillo and Design rule set of Federation and Empire as published by them. We play it online using a platform called Vassal, and we share it live with you here on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook Live. So thank you so much for joining us. Let's get into what we're doing today. Today, we are talking about the turn reveal for not only the ISC, so up to turn 30 for the ISC, but also the Federation. We're going to take a look at turn 32 for the Klingons. We're going to talk about this bottle right here in about 2 seconds, and let's start off with talking about Christmas. So we have just, at least in my household, we've entered the sort of the Christmas phase. As of next week, we're all sort of on break. The kids are home and fun things are happening around the Christmas tree. And as you may know, if you look at the calendar, you will see that the 25th falls on a Saturday. And so for that reason, next Saturday, there will be no live stream. However, we will be coming to you live on the 1st of January on New Year's Day. So a New Year's Day celebration as we bring to you some exciting news. Already there's some chatter in the background as to what's going on, sort of above and beyond what we're going to show you today. And of course, near the end of the stream today, we're going to be talking about this bottle. So if you're interested to find out what this bottle is all about, stick to the end of the show. So let's start off right away with the turn reveal for the ISC. So for those of you, as per the thumbnail, for those of you who don't know what the ISC is, the ISC it refers to the Interstellar Concordium. The Interstellar Concordium is a faction within the Starfleet universe, so not something you would have seen on any Star Trek TV episode that you probably would have seen, whether it's TNG, DS9, Voyager, or so on. But it exists specifically in the Starfleet universe. So the Starfleet universe is basically Star Trek, the original series, Star Trek, the animated series as it came out in the 70s, and the games surrounding that particular timeline. So as we know, Star Trek IP and all things timeline, whether it's the JJ verse or otherwise, they all sort of branch in different directions. The Starfleet universe is its own thing. And so the ISC, the Interstellar Concordium, is one of those factions. On the map, they kind of are off to the right. If you think of the Federation as being the center of the map, you have the Gorn in the top right, the Romulans in the bottom right, and then the ISC just beyond them. Why is that important? Because the Gorn, the Romulans, and the ISC are all plasma-based species or factions, meaning that the primary heavy weapon that they have on their warships is a plasma torpedo of various types. So the Gorn, the Romulans, and the ISC all use plasma-based weapons. By contrast, when you look at the Federation and Empire map, and you look on the left side of the map, you will see that there's the Kzinti, the Lyrans, the Klingons, and they all predominantly use a combination of disruptors and drones being basically space missiles, the Kzinti being heavily favored in that regard. So the geography is important only within the context of you understanding in the Starfleet universe sort of who's who and what uses what when it comes to weapons and things like that. For this game, this 4X game, none of that matters. All that matters is that we're talking about a faction. They just happen to be yellow on the map, and they are going forth and exploring just like everybody else. So I will stop talking about it, and let's just show you what we've got. So here we are starting off on turn 5 of the ISC. Now you can see here, the ISC has a slightly different start than what we've seen in previous episodes. If you haven't seen those live streams, then please feel free to head back and check them out after this is done. And you can see the Hydrans, the Klingons, and the evolution of different factions, and the Gorn different factions in the world of Star Trek New Worlds here in this game. So here we have turn 5 for the ISC. And right off the bat, we can see that there are 2 of these YFEL, so large. So again, going through the letter designations here, Y is the early era. So there's W and Y. All the early era sort of vanilla ships, we'll call them, start with a Y designator if they're early. So a Y era, F for freighter, the E is exploration, and the L is large. So you can see there's 2 large ones, 1 small one. What's interesting to note about the ISC specifically is you'll notice they have prime teams in this, for this faction, they refer to them as marshal teams, but prime teams embarked on those ships. Why is that important? Because for factions in this game, and the way that we've sort of homebrewed the rules ever so slightly for the 4X component of this game, prime teams can be embarked on large exploration freighters only if you do not have a early era survey ship. A survey ship being, for example, the D3E, which is the Klingon survey ship. D3 meaning it's a W era ship, E for exploration. The ISC does not have one of those ships. So for them and them only, or at least in the context of the factions we've seen so far, they can embark prime teams on board their ships. The prime team gives them a bonus or a +1 for the chances to explore any particular grayed out hex that they go into. So that's good. They've got 2 of those built, and they have a YFES as well. As you can also see here, they've built a diplomat. So diplomat is a sort of an expensive unit to start off with, and it is 10 EP to build. And why do we build them? Usually we build them to be able to build out, or improve rather, the domestic attitude for a planet. Let's pull up the ISC and see if that's what's going on. Ooh, interesting. Okay, so whoops, let me move that out of the way so it's not in your face. Let's put it up. Nope, let's put it over here. Sorry for dancing it around there. Okay, so a couple of interesting things here. One, we can see that let's just take a look at the home system. You can see they have a Y planetary ground base, the Y PGB. They have a YBS over their homeworld. They have a Y PGB over the minor planet and a colony. Same layout as all the other planets or all the other factions. We see that the diplomat's been built, and they've obviously been trying to do something on their homeworld, but probably with some failed rolls, because you can see that the homeworld is U, or unhappy. Now, that's not good, because as we go through the spectrum of the happiness scale, being hostile, unhappy, indifferent in the middle, friendly, and happy, the 2 H's on the extremes are where you see bad things happen. So basically you have a bonus to economy if they're happy, or H+, and a negative to the economy if you see an H-. So you can see here that they're on the path to being unhappy just because of probably some bad rolls. Perhaps there's a role-playing component. Who knows? But either way, there's been a sort of a mix-up or a fumbling of the ball when it comes to the diplomacy for the ISC. But other than that, you can see that they've got a number of hexes explored. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hexes explored in as many turns. So that's good, especially right off the bat. Let's take a quick walk around the fleet cap. So we can see fleet cap here is at 10. Totally understandable, because you got 2 YFELs at 4 piece and the YFES, the small freighter, at 2. That makes your 10. And then let's look at their EP. Understandably, they're suffering. Oh, yeah. Okay. So it looks like they are suffering a minor economic penalty due to the unhappiness at home. So on their home planet, that is. So you can see that they have a 12 they have 12 EP coming in as income. And so normally this would be higher than that. We would normally see 14 here, because if everything was even, a colony provides 1 EP, a minor planet provides 3 EP, and then the homeworld would provide 10. So that's a total of 14 EP. Obviously, the unhappiness is having a negative economic impact, And that's what we see here. Does it continue? As we open up to turn 10. Turn 10 sees a little bit more exploration going on, which is great. And you can notice the sort of pattern of exploration here, which is good. You can see the homeworld. So let's just take away the ships for just a second. And we can see that there are 2 bases currently, one built and one being built, being finished probably in this turn. So in year 71 spring, this YBS will be completed. So it'll be completed next turn. The YBS up north has been completed, and you can see there's sort of like the cardinal point system here in the sense of north and south, so that's really good. You can see the number of hexes explored without the ships being there to be about double what we saw before. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So more than double. That's good. Let's bring the ships back, and you can see that the number of exploration ships hasn't significantly increased. In fact, it hasn't increased at all. We've still got 2 YFELs and a YFES. You can see that there are now 2 Y convoys, which are building out YBSs to be able to expand the reach or the supply reach of these ships so they can explore further. Interesting to note here at turn 10, the sort of choices of what to build and when. I think this is a great approach because in the early days, you don't necessarily have a lot of supply reach. So therefore, is there any use in spending a lot of money building a bunch of other YFESs, for example, or building another YFEL, so large or small exploration freighters, and prime teams to embark on the big ones? Is it going to provide you much more? If we think about it from the context of supply, and let's assume that they have supply 2. So we'll set the supply radius at 2. And then we'll show you on the ISC, this is their current rate of supply. So if we don't include the bases, then you can see that the supply really, as far as hexes that they have not explored, they've really only got 5 hexes at turn 10 that have not been explored by this time. So building the bases is a happy medium between reach of supply and sort of optimizing the search radius or the ships that you have out there to conduct searches. So that's good. I think so far, based on turn 10, this is looking good. Let's go to turn 15. Boom. All right, so turn 15, what do we see here? Let's take away the ships real quick. And we can see that there is now this sort of north-south-west, so true cardinal point kind of configuration here for the supply network. We can see all 3 bases have finished being completed, so their supply networks are up and running. We can see that there has been a resource discovered in turn 15. And looking at the number of ships, well, the ISC has built an extra YFES. So we got 2 YFESs, 2 YFELs. Good. More ships to go out and explore. We've seen, of course, the base infrastructure has been built, and we can see the positioning of the convoys kind of tells us where he's going to build his next base. So you can see here 1, 2, 3, like we've got this, again, this cardinal point configuration. And keeping in mind what we had mentioned in previous episodes, we talked about the extended reaction range for bases or units with special sensors. So just to quickly recap, when you see the black diamond on a unit, like you do here on the bases, it indicates that they have special sensors, which allows, in this case, because bases are stationary, ships that are stationed there to react as far as 2 hexes away. There are some rules around that, and there's sort of interesting ways you can play with it, but fundamentally, if you have a base within 2 hexes of something else, for example, another base, then they can mutually support each other. You can have ships based at 1, and they can move to react and support the base that's 2 hexes away. So here you can see that if you look at the ships, it would seem to indicate that the Y convoy in Alpha 27 here is going to build a base that's going to be supported by the base that's built in the south and to the west. And if we sort of extend that further, it looks like he's going to build a box or something like that around his homeworld system and so on. Quick break because my coffee has arrived. Thank you so much. So I digress. I digress for just a moment. I had a casualty in my house this week which was my coffee maker. My coffee maker died. So we are now making coffee via the Bodum, which is that sort of coffee press that you've seen before. And so when I went to go get my coffee this morning, the Bodum's not big enough for the family, so I didn't have any coffee. So piping hot coffee in my hands, can't take a sip of it right now, but that's why it's right there. Wow, that's hot. All right, back to the map. So here we go. Like I say, we've got the cardinal points, the extra exploration ships, and we are good to go. So this is great. Let's do a quick fleet cap roundabout so we can see. We can see here, as was mentioned before, it's no significant change in fleet cap because it was 10 before when we looked at it in turn 5. And we can see here in turn 15, the addition of 1 extra supply ship means 2. So total of 12. Let's look at EP. We can see that EP is up to 17. So this indicates some good things are happening. We've got 1 extra EP coming in from the resource, but a significant turnaround from the 12 of earlier. Let's take a quick look at the ISC capital system, and we will see why. Let's move that out of the way. So we can see here that we've got the homeworld is now happy plus. Why is that important? Because it gives us a +2 on the economy. That's really good. So the 14 now becomes a 16, plus that resource makes it 17. Way to go. The next thing, of course, will be to improve the minor planet, because the minor planet will give you an extra 0.5 if it's happy plus, or H plus, I should say. And the colony won't give you a perk at this point, but as it grows, and the potential for it to grow is significant. So if it's happy, good things will happen. So that's looking good. Turn 15, and this is where we're at. So in context, this is pretty on par as far as sort of not outside the norm with regards to the other factions we've seen. We've seen the Gorn, the Hydrons, the Klingons, and based on those factions and what we've seen here, looking really good. Very much on the curve. All right, let's go to turn 20. And what do we see here? Okay, so turn 20. So real quick, just looking at fleet cap, we can see there's no extra ships. Still at 12. So we got the 2 exploration freighters in the south. We've got the YFEL still doing their exploration thing. And you can see that it's going in sort of a very, I don't know if it's coordinated in the sense, but I would say it's organic because of the spaces that you're exploring. When we look at the ISC supply radius, you can see that he's really leveraging and maxing out the areas of supply and the coverage provided by those bases. Now, at turn 15, we don't know whether he's got supply 3 or supply 2. Just assuming supply 2, this really makes sense. You can see that the ships are at the extreme of a supply 2 supply radius, and the base configuration, the way it is really maximizing, or at least the ships are maximizing that reach. So that's good. We can see that this convoy has moved into the Y column. Again, all these sector designations or the hexes here aren't the real hexes of where this faction is. But you can see here that in the Y26 hex here, it looks like they're going to build another base. And again, that would be mutually supported by these 2 bases here. Let's get rid of that supply. And EP is now at 18, because we can see here as we take the ships away for a second, we can see the base configuration. Like we said, that base was built where we thought it was going to be built, and a new resource has been discovered. So with 18 from the 17 from what we saw before, we can tell that the minor planet in the capital system hasn't gone up, but rather basically it's status quo in the home system, and we've got an extra EP point bringing it up to 18. Let's go to turn 25 and see how things are changing. So let's take the ships away for a second. So we can see that the base building is exactly as we thought. It's sort of very, very boxy. What's interesting to note is that base hasn't been built in Y26 and the convoy has moved. So instead of the base being built in Y26, which is, for example, what I was saying, what it looked like was going to happen in the previous term, that's obviously not what's happening here. Instead, it looks like it's being moved down to 27, and this box structure is going to continue to move out. Very interesting approach in the sense that it's different from the norm, and it'll be interesting to see how this evolves going forward. We can see that there's, of course, more bases to the south, so we've got a reach of now 4, and you've got these sort of tendrils of exploration that are starting to form. This one down here in the Foxtrot area, and sort of like a push out 2 hexes, both on the northwest and the southeast here. Like I say, very organic in the way that the exploration's happening. We can see that there's a convoy here, so it looks like potentially a base going to be built there, rather. And we can tell from the position of the ships really clearly that he has supply 3. Why? Well, 2 key indicators. One, this base in Charlie 27 is 3 hexes away from this ship in Foxtrot 25. 3 hexes. And if you didn't think that was good enough, then the one in Charlie 29, 1, 2, 3, 3 hexes away. So we know he's got supply 3. So let's set supply 3. And let's just take a look at the reach. Boom. So you can see that looks really good. It's very interesting and sort of symmetrical pattern of exploration, like sort of a little bit boxy, but yeah, very uniform. And you can see that based on the reach of his supply relative to the ships exploring, he's doing a fairly decent job, although he's starting to fall behind a bit on the exploration front, in the sense of his supply is sort of outpacing his reach on exploration, and that may slow down or sort of impact his ability to sort of discover new resources and build out that economy. The placement of the bases is really interesting. I'm going to be very interested to see as we move forward how that's going to evolve and how that's going to benefit, or just see what the results are, because the sort of the natural tendency with a hexagonal map is to do the sort of classic honeycomb shape. You do it north-south, northwest, southeast, or sorry, northwest, southwest, northeast, southeast. But this is different, and it's still, like, with the way it's being built, they're still mutually supporting. It's just a matter of concentrating your focus on certain locations and keeping the supply sort of in check. You're still maintaining that supply network. It'll be interesting, like I say, to see how this evolves going forward, because one of the true tests of your logistics in this game is when you actually go to war with somebody. And when you go to war with them and there's a conflict, that dynamic, like how the strategic gameplay works out and how you're able to defend your space, is really telling about the success or the failure of your supply network. We've seen, for example, the Hydrons have a strategy right now where they're building sort of 3 hexes out, really maximizing their supply reach. The Gorn, not so much. Certainly not the case here. The build pattern versus the Gorn, for example, the Gorn's doing that classic hexagon shape. Not so much here. It'll be really interesting, like I say, to see how that benefits or maybe hinders other players going forward when it comes to the conflict and so on. But as of right now, this pattern is really working well for the ISC. The only thing maybe slowing the ISC down in turn 25 is just the lack of exploration ships. That's it. So let's take a look at turn 30. And this is the last turn for the ISC. So taking a quick look here, let's bring the ships back. So first off, 2 exciting things happening. 1, take away the ships for a second. The discovery, 3 exciting things happening. This is so good. So the discovery of this colony here. So this colony looks like it is a Paravian colony based on the colors. So this red and yellow color scheme is for the Paravian faction. Paravians are a faction that's basically an offshoot of the Gorn. If you think of the Gorn as basically walking dinosaurs, then the Paravians are like walking feathered dinosaurs. Very similar. They have a lot of similarities in their ship design. Not ship design, ship weaponry. The base heavy weapon for the Paravians is closely related to plasma. It's a plasma-based weapon. It's just not plasma torpedoes. It's a little different. But either way, Paravians are sort of related to the plasma family, so to speak, in the Starfleet universe. So this is a Paravian planet. You can see that it's a colony, and it is currently unfriendly towards the ISC. So very interesting to see. Also, really interesting piece of geography. There is a gravity well here. So let's take a second and talk about gravity wells. So in this game, there are a total of 3 different gravitational anomalies. There is a wormhole. A wormhole is basically, you've seen this in many different Star Trek series and episodes, much like DS9. A wormhole is a two-way doorway through space, and it provides access through and back to another location on the map. As it populates here, if you were a player to discover it, it will show up on your map as a wormhole, and the destination or the end point of that wormhole will not be revealed until you travel through it. Once you travel through it, there's a sort of random generator that we have that indicates where it's going to be located, and it pops up in that location. So you don't know where it's going to end up until you go through. Now, the sort of sister and brother, if you want to say, to a wormhole is a gravity well. And if you think of a wormhole as a two-way door, a gravity well is a one-way door. And a gravity well has, we'll call it an innie and an outie. When you discover a gravity well, it will always be an innie, because you won't discover the end point. Just like with a wormhole, you will never discover the out point of a wormhole, only the in point. So in this context, what's been discovered here is a innie, or like the entrance to a gravity well. You can still travel a gravity well, just like you can a wormhole, but there's no ability to come back. It's a one-way trip. And one thing to note about there is a specific tech around wormholes. And at this early stage, those who have not discovered wormholes will not have the ability to research this tech. But when you discover a wormhole, you can send a R&D team. This is one of the special teams that we have available in the game. There are diplomats, prime teams, and R&D teams, by example. An R&D team can be situated on the wormhole with a ship, and they will explore the wormhole and conduct research and development on the wormhole and sort of like understanding how to travel it. Once you've discovered or explored the wormhole, then you can transit it, and you can conduct research on it. And once you conduct research on it, then you can start developing a tech tree on being able to eventually get to a point where you can have supply running through a wormhole. Not a gravity well, unfortunately, but you can have supply going back and forth between a wormhole. It's a specific technology that you have to research, and the advantage of it is, of course, if you have a wormhole and you can provide supply through it, you can have a base on one side, a base on the other, and you can explore that extra or that other side of the wormhole. For those of you who have joined us in our previous campaign, you will have noted that the Klingons had a number of these going on, and early in the game we discovered a wormhole, and we used that to be able to explore to maximum effect. So very interesting here that he's got a gravity well. Back to the map. So like I said, this is an innie for the gravity well. One thing to note, I should say, for the markers, I'm not sure if you can see it very well here, but we have different markers in Vassal for the for the gravity wells. And so I'm just trying to, I won't worry about it right now, but there are different markers for the innie, the outie, and then the two-way wormhole. Suffice it to say that if you look at this, you will see sort of a triangle shape pointing in. That's an innie. If you have pointy ends going out, that's an outie. And if you have sort of a diamond shape, meaning in and out, then that's a two-way wormhole. But let me get to the third and perhaps the most interesting piece of this particular map. What do you see at the top? I see a slow-moving warp signature. So there's two things about slow-moving warp signatures. One, they are slow-moving ships, like an exploration freighter. An exploration freighter, whether it's small or large, is a slow warp signature. Now, in this game, we have different size classes for ships. Sort of maybe counterintuitive. The larger the number, the smaller the ship. So a size 4, SC4, size class 4, is the smallest, well, is smaller than a size class 3, which would be equivalent to a cruiser, size class 2, which is something like a dreadnought, and size class 1 is not something that we can build at this early stage of the game. A size class 4 indicates a slow-moving YFES, or small exploration freighter. That's what that looks like to me. So it would be very interesting to see what that is. You can see, very interesting here, a couple things to note. You can see that the ISC has done two things. One, they're building tugs. So we've talked about, when we talked about the hydrons, the ability to build a tug is a huge game changer. Once you can build a tug, that is, it allows you to build your bases at a faster rate because you're not constrained by the logistical constraints around the only being able to do one mission at a time for convoys. You may have more than one convoy, but you can only have one convoy mission at a time. Tugs get around that because they can do, each tug can do its own tug mission, such as building a base. And with more tugs on the board, and I can see that there's at least 2, then he can build bases as long as he's got money to build them. So that's really good. We can also see, and this is important, the YTG. So the TG is the tug, but the Y designator is important, meaning that he has discovered Y technology, which is the first threshold from W to Y, and he's built the slipways to be able to build stuff. Based on the numbers here, the YTG looks to be a cruiser, so he's upgraded his cruiser slipway, at the very least, to a Y level. Also interesting to note, the YCL. In order to build a CL, you need to have a CL slipway. So he has at least a CL slipway. So he's building cruisers at a YTG and light cruisers at a YCL. Although, here's an interesting thing. I'm just thinking of it as we're going through this. The tug platform may be a light cruiser. Because if you look at the light cruiser, it's a 4.5 and the tug is a 1.5. So maybe the light cruiser is the platform for the tug, and that's how that works. So very interesting to note. And of course, when you look, I mean, I don't see any other ships other than light cruisers. So maybe it's just that he upgraded his light cruiser, or upgraded his slipway to a light cruiser slipway. Here's the money maker right now. Looking at fleet cap, we can see fleet cap has grown substantially since in the last 15 turns. We are now at 38 fleet cap with a 10 attack, 38 defense. This is obviously, you know, the building of tugs and the YCLs. So that's a huge change. And if you think about it, the YCL is a 4.5 ship and the YTG is a 1.5 ship. So the math is pretty simple. 2 YCLs, 2 YTGs, total of 4 light cruiser-based ships. That gives you the 1038. Let's look at EP. You can see here, like you say, the minor faction is represented here as Paravian, and the ISC is now has 20.5 EP, which is huge. Let's take a look at the distribution here. You can see there's a resource just south of this base built here, the 2 resources we discussed previously, and a base in the Y column here. The 0.5 is most likely because of the happy attitude of the minor planet in his home system. 20.5. Boom. So that's looking good. At turn 30 with an economy of 20.5, things are looking really good. You can see the rate of exploration and base building is quite significant. And the fact that there is a slow-moving warp signature discovered on his northern tip. So let's take a second and think about this for a second. I'm going to zoom out. Okay. Whoop. We know in this game that I'll switch my head to the other side. It might make this a little easier. We know in this game that the map is effectively a hexagon. So let's go all the way out. Now, all the maps that we've talked about have been displaced or moved so that we're not revealing the location of any one player. Okay, no problem. So the location of this player is not what we're seeing on the map, but based on where they're discovering another player, we can get a sense of maybe where they are, if that makes sense. So let's do a little thought experiment here. When we look at the exploration pattern of this player, they are predominantly exploring in a southwestern and southerly direction. Okay? And they're moving west, not east predominantly. They've discovered somebody to their north. The question is, and we'll see shortly, where this player is. So just, spitballing here. When I look at this player, if I were to put them, let's say, straight up at the top of the map, if I put them straight up top, then the exploration moving south more than north makes sense. Southwest maybe just be the rate of success that they've had in their exploration, but they've encountered somebody to their north. Now, that's possible if there was a wormhole. However, when you travel a wormhole in this early stage of the game without having researched any of the tech around wormholes, your ship will be crippled as you go through. And it's important to note that there is a tier of the technology tree where slow-moving units like a small exploration freighter can go through, and that's quite a ways down. So the chances of a small exploration freighter being able to travel undamaged through a wormhole is low, extremely low. I would say at this early stage of the game, impossible, nearly impossible. So it is most likely that this individual is not positioned in the north. What about if they were positioned sort of on a pie chart on the northeast? Well, that would make sense in the exploration going south and southwest. And potentially they have a neighbor that is sort of north and northwest of them. And if they're exploring southeast and he's exploring northwest, they bump into each other. That particular location might make sense. So we can say that there's a good likelihood, based on the location of the discovery of the ship and the exploration, that this player is located on the eastern side of the map, most likely in the northeastern section of the map. It's also likely or possible that they could be maybe around sort of the true east position. But like I say, it's sort of unlikely that they are, let's say, southeast. I mean, they could be exploring southwest. That could make sense, but there's no effort here to explore to the northeast. So why would that be? They're certainly not on, I would argue they're not on the west because they're not exploring. They'd be exploring to the edge of the galaxy, not into the center to meet people. That could be a strategy, but like I say, seems unlikely. And so for that reason, I don't think that they're on the western side of the map. It seems they're on the eastern side of the map. And if my guess is a guess, I'm going to say they're located sort of in this area here on that northeasterly axis, somewhere in the range of, let's say, 15 to 45 degrees off center, if that makes sense. That's my guess. Maybe 20 to 60, somewhere between the 20 and 60 degree mark. That's my guess. We'll see. It'll be exciting. Let me quickly switch out the maps here. So one of the things, just from a tech perspective, I'm only able to, I got to shuffle the vassal maps a little bit here. So as I'm talking to you, I'm just going to be shuffling the maps a bit. As far as what maps I can have open, I will leave the most recent ISC map up so that we can discuss it. 25. Nope. There we go. And now I've got some other maps that are popping up. Let's see here. Yes. So let me just take a quick drink of water. And let's go to the chat and talk about what's going on in the chat. So I can see here we've got Jim and Paul and Chuck in the chat right now. I'm seeing, let's see. So Facebook is working, guys. Definitely me and some. Oh, so it seems as though YouTube is not live streaming for some reason. Oh. Well then. So all of you are seeing me on the Facebook live stream. Let's take a quick look here. I can see you guys. Hey, they tend to squawk a lot. So 15 minutes ago, I can see comments here on the. So all of you are seeing. There we go. Seeing some comments here on the Facebook side. My apologies there. Obviously, some kind of technical issue. I'll have to sort that out after the fact. Yeah. Stream settings. Well, we won't deal with that right now. If you're watching us on the live stream, again, I apologize. If you're catching us on the replay, this will be a non-issue for you, so not to worry. Let's dive right into the Federation turns. Let me just get sorted here. All right. So we'll start off with the Federation, and let me... There we go. All right, so we are on the Federation turn 5. So interesting to see the Federation. I love early Federation ships. The counters on this are sort of counterintuitive to everything we think of when we think of the Federation. When you look at the WCA, it's a great ship, but the shape of it looks totally different than anything we've ever seen. If I zoom in, you can see the shape of this ship is just nothing that resembles anything Star Trek, right? It almost looks like maybe sort of something pseudo-Romulan, like maybe the nacelles on the side and this like pointy bow bit. Regardless, it's just, I like being able to see the Federation with a sort of the non-saucer aesthetic. So that's kind of cool. So we've got turn 5 here, which is very interesting to see. Let's take away the ships real quick. So right off the bat, something exciting's happened for the Federation. So cool. So we've got, first of all, in turn 5, they've already discovered a resource. That's great. They've discovered this this colony. Looks like they are Tholians based on the color designation here, and they're unhappy with the Federation. And they've also discovered an Orion base right next to their homeworld. So a couple of interesting developments right off the top. Let's look at the ships that we've got. So we can see that based on probably discovering the Tholians there, probably in turn 1, he's built some warships. So we've got 3 heavy or like W era cruisers with 3.5, so great ship, especially for this time period. 2 YFELs and a YFES. So that's looking good. Let's see here. Let's take a quick look at 6th Fleet, which is the Tholians. So 6th Fleet is showing a W era, 2 W era patrol craft. So they're a 1.5 attack, 3 defense. Nothing too crazy. Certainly not going to stand up to 3 different W era cruisers, but he's also got a planetary ground base. Planetary ground bases are sort of tricky because they provide an EW shift to attacks. And what that just basically means, it gives you in a combat scenario, it decreases your effective ability to deal out damage if you're the attacking player and you're at the disadvantage, EW disadvantage. We can have an entire episode around EW if you'd like, but that is something that it is, it's EW is something that we'll talk about in another episode. Paused out there for a second. Obviously, the lack of coffee is catching up with me as I take a quick sip. All right, things are looking good. All right, let's go to turn 10. So as we see, oh my goodness, look at this. Okay. Woo! All right, so not only has the Federation, by turn 10, discovered the Tholians and Orion pirates, but now they've also discovered my boys, a Klingon planet. a Klingon planet which is happy with them. That's so, against the grain. So the colony is happy with them. That's always nice to see. Obviously, they have a Federation diplomat on that planet trying to turn that around, so that's good. So Federation diplomat, blue fleet. So the Klingon fleet, blue fleet. Let's see what they got. They've got an E1, so it's equivalent to a frigate, and a destroyer with the F3J. The F3J, incidentally, is a penal ship, which is a unique unit to the Klingons and allows them to do some sort of interesting things, such as the honor duel, which is something we talked about in a previous episode. Although that was more in a role-playing context, this is sort of straight game functionality. There are some special missions and or abilities that penal ships have that we talk about in a previous episode earlier this year, but we can do a refresher on it later in the new year. So we have Blue Fleet, and they also have a planetary ground base. You can see that there is a Federation cruiser there and a diplomat trying to work them into the fold, it would seem. The Tholians are still unhappy with the Federation, and as we can see, the continued exploration of the two YFELs and the YFES. We've also got Home Fleet. Let's take a quick look at Home Fleet and see what they've got. Home Fleet, whoa, man, the Feds are militaristic. I like it. So the Feds have built a total of 6 W-era cruisers at this early stage of the game. Oh, man. Okay, let's pull up Fleet Cap. I'm so curious. Oh, yes. Okay, so the Federation this early in the game already has a fleet cap of 40. So 18 attack, 40 defense. That's phenomenal. 6 total ships, or 6 ship equivalents, which is a little bit, it's a little bit misleading because those ship equivalents don't seem to include, at this point, the YFELs and the YFES. They're just counting at this point the ships that are in Home Fleet, so those are the cruisers, and the 3 cruisers that are out and about. So those are the ship equivalents that they're talking about. Very, very interesting to see that as a development. Let's look at their EP. So EP for the Federation is 16. That makes total sense. So it looks like they've, and we'll take a look here in a second to the homeworld, but looks like they've improved the attitude at their homeworld, and they've got that 1 extra EP coming from that resource, bringing them a total of 16 EP. Let's actually, hold on. Yeah, there's another resource there. So they've discovered another resource. I was going to say that only makes 15. Here we go. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the Federation home system. So we can see here, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so this is my miscalculation. So straight off the bat, without any changes to your attitude at home, the default based on the way every player starts is 14. So we got 14 plus those 2 resources gives them the 16. I mistakenly thought that there had been some changes to the home system improving their attitude, which would have improved their economic output. Homeworld is still indifferent. The minor planet Mars is still indifferent. So we're seeing that play out here. That's fine. All good. So it looks like those ships and those systems are looking good. Keeping in mind, this is only turn 10. Only turn 10. They've discovered 2 colonies and the Ryans, and they've built a 6-ship fleet of cruisers, no less. Woo! I love it. I love it. Okay. All right, this is turn 15. Looks like the exploration has kind of hit a wall, and I'm going to bet that is based on supply. Let's look at, that's Klingon supply. Let's take that away. Let's set the Federation supply. Yeah, and it's totally based on supply limitations. So we can assume that at this early stage, turn 15, they only have 2 supply, especially with the amount of resources that he's dedicated to build these cruisers. Chances are he's not researching supply as a technology, i.e. making that technology happen sooner for him. So based on what we're seeing here, I can see that he's explored the maximum stretch of his supply range. Got it. Now let's take away the ships for a sec. He's built 1 extra YBS, which is increasing his exploration range here. And so we've got that happening as well. We've got it. Considering the lack of space explored, this is really good. I mean, you've got 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So out of 11, this is really good. Out of 11 hexes explored, And so, sorry, that's incorrect. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Out of 17 hexes explored, 3 of them are resources, 2 of them are colonies, and he's got an Orion pirate. So let's assume the colonies at some point in the future come on board. That means that he's got, at this early stage of the game, 30% of his exploration approximately has resulted in economically advantageous things that he's found. That's phenomenal. That's really prolific exploration rolls. Really, really good. And based on the ship count, he's got all these. Let's go, just because the map is getting a little crowded there, it's a little harder to see. So we can see that the Feds have a total of 8 ship equivalents. You can see that they're all fleet caps of 5. So that looks like if they're all fleet cap 5, they're all cruisers, which makes sense because he's got a cruiser slipway. He's obviously pumping these things out. And he's got a total of 8 ship equivalents. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Home fleet has 3, and then there's one more in Zulu. So he's got a total of 8 ship equivalents, 5 of them floating out there, 3 at home, probably to protect against the Tholian 6th Fleet. And yeah, the Feds are out to fight. Don't mess with the Feds, or at least peace through strength is what we're talking about here. Very, very interesting. Let's see here. I'm just going quickly to the... Looks like you're ready. Okay. All right. My apologies for anyone who was catching us on YouTube. It looks as if YouTube is now up and running. If you are watching live, if you want to quickly head over to YouTube, just check it out, see if I'm live there. I apologize. Obviously, a technical issue on my end. It seems to have, I've fixed it now. So we're looking that we're live on YouTube as we speak. We'll see how that goes. I'll have to upload this video afterwards as sort of a clean take, and we'll go from there. Back to the action. So as we can see here, we've got all these ships. The ships are being maximized to use his supply radius, and yeah, he's got, like I say, the amount of stuff that he's explored and discovered at this point, whew, incredible, really exciting. Let's go to turn 20. Oh, yes. Okay, so what does this tell us? Right off the bat, I know that the Federation in turn 20 have supply 3. Why? Well, let's do the quick math. We can see that from the homeworld, 1, 2, 3 to this Foxtrot column here, bang, he's discovered. So he's got a ship out there trying to discover and explore that hex. So he's definitely got supply 3. So let's just change to supply 3, and let's show you, whoops, and let's show you what the Federation is looking like. So this is the bubble for the Federation. You can see that the reach out to the east is, doing the best that they can, and he's really sort of maximized the reach out to the west. Let's see here. So take away the ships for a sec. We can see that there are 2 bases built in the traditional sort of hexagonal pattern. You can see that they're sort of northwest and southwest respectively. And really, everything's sort of been impeded or constrained by the Klingon and the Tholian factions. So really interesting to see here. Quick call out to the Fed player. Here's a question for you. Now that you've got the Klingons, I totally understand. So quick talk about the mechanics in the game. When we deal with minor factions, there is a memory that exists from one minor faction to another. For example, if you've currently discovered 2 other non-player factions, right? NPCs. And you've discovered those 2 NPCs, and you are fighting with one. The other one will see that you're warring with that other NPC faction, and that will affect them and their attitude towards you. If they are also warlike, because all these non-player characters have sort of like an attitude and a culture and a personality of their own. So if they're warlike as well, they might respect that, and they respect the strength, and they'll like you more. If they're more peaceful and docile, they'll see that and they'll freak out and they'll become very unhappy with you. And there's a give and take there. So you never really know how they're going to respond depending on how you react. We'll see. However, the memory only exists for non-player factions that can see you. So if they can't see you, then they don't know the history of the races you've decimated in the past, or so on and so forth. So it's a piece there. So we'll have to see how that works. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious when I'm looking at this map. I'm curious for two things. One, the Tholians are they're unhappy with the Federation, and they're so close to the Feds. My first question is, why don't you attack them? Of course, the Federation player might have a role-playing reason for that, or they're pacifists, or who knows. But they don't want to attack the Tholians. Got it. If they were to attack the Tholians right now, and let's assume that these are pacifist Klingons, like they're the antithesis of what a traditional Klingon might be, then they'll react negatively potentially to that attack, and they won't enjoy that outcome. Okay, no problem. So right now you're trying to convert the Klingons. They're already at happy plus, and so you're trying to bring them in. If you can bring them in peacefully, great. One thing to note about colonies and the different planet classes that we have, which are here, let me switch so you can see we got colonies on the far left. And then we've got developing planets, minor planets, medium planets, and major planets. What's the difference? Colonies give you 1 EP. Developing planets give you 2. Minor planets give you 3. And you can see where I'm going with this. Medium planets give you 4, and then 5 for a major. The only difference is your homeworld provides you 10, and that's a unique thing for your homeworld. In this case, if you were to attack and devastate a planet, the economy for that planet is reduced to 1 or 2 in the case of a minor planet. And I may be wrong. I'd have to go check just for medium planets. I believe there is it's more than 1. But regardless, when you attack and devastate a larger planet, it really decreases the amount of income you get from it. And there's 10 turns that occur while it recovers, and then there's another 4 turns that occur before it's sort of up and running at full economic output. So essentially, you're looking at 14 turns of economic downside for attacking and devastating another planet. But that only exists for planets that have an EP count higher than 1 or 2 in this case for a developing planet. So here we have 2 colonies, 1 EP each. There's no disadvantage at this point to go to war and attack them, potentially. As of right now, the way the Federation is displaced, there's no advantage in going to war. Well, there would be a disadvantage potentially in going to war and attacking either one of these, because the other faction will probably respond negatively to the fact that you're fighting them or fighting their neighbor. And they see you as a threat, and they'll respond accordingly. Again, role-playing factors coming into play here as far as like how you want to approach things and how this is going to sort of map your narrative going forward. So many interesting things here. But when we look back at the Klingon turn, like our turn in, I believe it was even as early as turn 5, when we discovered our colonies, there was a very distinct protocol that we followed, the Alpha, to be able to attack and destroy and sort of integrate them into our society. And then when we discovered future, because we discovered initially a Lyran colony and then we discovered Lyrans again, the dialogue and the exchange that happened there about the Lyrans really sort of drove that narrative. So we encountered them, we incorporated them into our civilization, and then went from there. So that drove our narrative. How this is affecting the Federation narrative, I don't know. We shall see. So very interesting to see here. Okay. Let's go. Let's turn off the supply real quick. And that's turn 20. let's go to turn 25. So let's just move this down here. We can see here in turn 25. Oh, man. Woo. I tell you, man, the Feds have some of the most interesting turns that I've seen so far. So exciting. Okay, so first of all, let's just take away the ships. So it's a bit of a hot mess there. Let's take away the ships. Okay. Woo. So turn 25. The Klingons are now part of the Federation. Yay, celebration, happy, go around, fantastic. And then they bump into another faction. This looks like a Kzinti faction. And they're indifferent. You can see by the eye, they're indifferent, so they don't care too much. They're a colony. Again, same sort of size as everything they discovered. They discovered the Klingons. They discovered the Kzinti and the Tholians, all colonies. The Kzinti have shown up. They have themselves a YBS as well as a base station. And I don't see any fleet. Oh, hold on. I'll bring the ships back. There we are. Baron fleet. So Kzinti Baron fleet. Let's take a quick look. And we can see they have a destroyer and a frigate. So WDD, WFF. So W air destroyers. We can see that if we take away the ships again, we can see that the Federation is continuing to build out their base network. They have a base in the north and they have a base in the northeast. So continuing to build out the supply really to like accelerate their ability to explore and expand. Fantastic. Looks good. Wow. There's a lot of ships in a tight space. Let's bring up fleet cap so we can see. Whoa. Oh my goodness. All right. So keeping in mind, there's only 5 turns difference, right? And when it comes to slipways, places where you build ships in this game, anything higher than a destroyer alternates in its ability to build. For example, in this game, we have 2 seasons per year: a spring, summer, a fall, winter, and so 2 turns per year, and larger slipways, light cruiser, dreadnought. When you're able to develop a dreadnought slipway, they build in the alternating season. So cruisers will build in the spring, and then if you have 2 cruiser slipways, you can build one in the spring and one in the fall. Why is that important? Because it's a constraint around your ability to build cruisers, and the Feds are building a ton of cruisers. So they can only build 1 cruiser every 2 years unless they've built or upgraded to the point where they have 2 cruiser slipways. Oh, of course. Sorry, let me switch over here. What a technical schmoz it is today, isn't it? Okay, so let's recap here. We're looking at the map. What we see on the map here is the excitingness of the Federation turn. They've encountered the Kzinti, another minor faction. They have sort of incorporated and brought in the Klingons. So the Klingons are now in. And the Tholians are now they are still there. They're unhappy. And it looks like, have they increased their fleet size? No. Okay, no, they haven't. So Klingons are now part of the Federation. They've discovered the Kzinti, or a Kzinti minor faction, and they have a wormhole. This is incredible. Okay, so let's button off the fleet cap thing here. So when we're looking at the fleet cap, we've got, as of right now, 12 total ship equivalents. 12 ship equivalents, meaning they have 12 cruisers that they've built, because they're only building cruisers. If they're building in alternating years, this makes total sense, because they are building in the spring, which is even years, I believe. So, so turn 1 is the spring. So at this point in turn 25 meaning that they've only completed up to turn 24, and this is the 25th turn they're going to submit. They've built 2 more cruisers, and they'll probably keep building more. With that, they have an amazing attack factor of 34 and 65 defense factor, respectively, for their fleet cap. It's really big considering this early stage in the game. 12 ships, all cruisers, and the numbers speak for themselves. It's quite significant. So that's impressive. They've sent their diplomat over to the Tholian planet. Looks like they're trying to get that working. That's good. And let's see here. Okay, I'm going to take away the ships real quick. So, again, they've built out the base network. They have all these ships, and they're continuing to build out new bases. So you can see the Y convoy and the Echo column here is building out new bases. Okay, so let's take a shot here at turn 25. Things are looking very interesting for the Federation. Wormhole, which means they could pop up anywhere. 3 different minor factions that they've encountered, and their fleet size is the biggest you've seen in from all the players. Like the offensive and defensive capability of their ships is well above everybody else. So that's just really impressive. Let's go to turn 30. Okay, so in turn 30, this is what we see. Very interesting. Okay. Let me guess. I'm just going to pull up Fleet Cap right now and see, yep, they built another cruiser. So they got another cruiser, total of 3770. Woo! Man, I got to say I'm a fan of the Feds. I am a fan of the Feds in this game. Woo! Looking good. Okay, so let's take a quick look here. Let's take away the ships. So we can see that they have a total of 4 resources, because there's a resource under the space. They've completed their initial sort of hexagon shape with a slight compromise because of the location of the Tholian world, which, interestingly enough, now is Happy Plus. Happy Plus Tholians, meaning they're probably going to, in short order here, in the next series of turns, will eventually incorporate into the Federation. So very much playing classic Feds in that way. So that's good to see. The efforts are paying off. The base disposition here, I would say, is probably built specifically for supply. Really concerned about, getting that supply radius out there and getting it up and running. And let's just take a quick look at Federation Reach. So we can see here that he's searched sort of to the maximum of his exploration to the north and is working his way around the clock. Totally makes sense. And one of the things that's really interesting here I want you to note is the number of cruisers. So I talked about this for the Klingon turn. We were building cruisers, putting prime teams on them and sending them out, and that they had the same chances of exploring as a YFES. Well, the Federation player has taken that to heart, because I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cruisers. Oh, and there's an 8th one here. Boom. 8 cruisers with prime teams embarked, and he's using them to explore. He's really trying to make up for lost ground here quickly, based on the fact that he's got this rather significant fleet and he's exploring in force. Really, really interested to see what happens when the Federation bumps into somebody. Very interested to see how that works. Okay. So let's take a quick look at their EP. We can see their EP is 19. So like we talked about the range of different economic point sort of distribution. There are some folks that are a little lower, some folks a little higher. It's still within the average, but definitely on the lower end of the average. We just looked at the ISC at being 20.5. Federation's at 19. But the reason why the Federation is at 19 is because of the hurdles that they faced. I mean, look at what we've got here. We've got... in relatively short order, they could go from 19 to 21, and that would put them right smack dab on the curve for exploration. So no issues and or problems there. I think the Feds are in a really good spot, quite honestly. I mean, they are tight in the sense of they haven't explored as much territory. Their economy is a little weaker, but generally speaking, it's not game changing. And at the end of the day, they have a relatively massive fleet to the other players right now. And they can deploy, when they bump into somebody, they can deploy that fleet right now. So whether the Federation chooses to be a little warmongerish or peace through strength, so to speak, in a strong negotiating position, I think that they'll be in a very good position to be able to do that. Really, really good. Interesting to note, of course, that the Feds, like many of us, are constrained by the lack of tugs. They're using their convoys to build out their base network, but they're really maximizing the use of this cruiser plus prime team exploration methodology, which I have to admit is really neat to see. He's got 2 large exploration freighters on the go, it would seem. I would recommend, I don't know off the top of my head if the Feds have a exploration cruiser in the W era or the Y era, but if they do, as soon as you have an exploration cruiser, start building those exploration cruisers and getting them out there, even if you have to scuttle a YFEL. Also, get prime teams. If you don't have an early era exploration cruiser, then get prime teams on those YFELs if you can. If you can't, then, like I say, swap them out for the exploration cruiser with a prime team ASAP. Otherwise, build another YFEL because they have a better chance of exploring than even the cruisers with a prime team embarked. But like I say, this particular strategy of what I described, which is using the cruisers with the prime teams, is really, really good and so interesting to see. So interesting to see. Okay, so far in today's episode, we've talked about, and it's been over an hour, so thank you so much. In today's episode, we've talked about the ISC Turn Reveal. We've done the Federation Turn Reveal, and we talked a little bit about Christmas. Yep, 10 maximum prime teams per empire is what Jim is saying in the chat. Thank you for joining us back in the chat. Unfortunately, like I say, technical issue at the very beginning there that I didn't catch until just now. Don't worry, we will re-upload, because I record all these, I will re-upload a full clean version of this video, and you'll be able to catch that. The live version? You'll be able to catch the clean version shortly later today. So what have we seen here? We've seen the Feds, we've seen the ISC, we've talked a little bit about Christmas. Now the question is the Klingon turn. Here's what I'm going to do. Because today's live stream has been a little hiccupy, what I will do is I will record another episode tomorrow. You'll see a live stream go up for Sunday, that is tomorrow on Sunday, as a way to, help sort of fill the gap of live streams that are coming your way from me over this holiday season. I'll put out a new live stream tomorrow for you, which will talk about specifically the Klingon turns thus far. Right now I'll talk about, so we were going to talk about Klingon turn up to turn 32. So we will talk about that tomorrow in tomorrow's live stream. Be on the lookout for the live stream upcoming notification on the channel. And what we'll do is in tomorrow's episode, we will talk about this bottle and what's going on with it, because we've already been on here for an hour. Like I say, all the technical bugs. We'll do it again tomorrow. We'll make it clean. We'll make it good. We'll talk about the bottle. We'll talk about the Klingon turns, and we'll get you set up, jonesing for that post-turn 30 reveal, because there is so much coming. Quick context, quick teaser. I'm showing you up to turn 30 for all these different players. Many of these players have gone beyond turn 30 in the chat right now. We're talking about turn 30 up to now, but many of them have done turn 31, 32, and so on. I can tell you we have some exciting stuff that's happened in turn 31 and turn 32. Depending on what I get shared with before tomorrow's live stream, I'll be able to share some of that with you. We shall see. And we'll go from there to be able to set us up for the New Year's live stream, which will be coming to you, obviously, on New Year's Day. That would be January 1st of 2022. Yeah, 2022. It's crazy to think the year's gone by so fast. Thank you so much, everybody, for suffering through the technical difficulties of this live stream. Like I say, I will re-upload a clean version of this stream for you, and we'll go from there. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure coming to you live. For those of you who are in the chat, I'll be jumping in our Discord server shortly after this to be able to chat the chat and walk the walk. Yes, be on the lookout for tomorrow's live stream. Again, Sunday at a normal time at 11 o'clock. I will be live talking about Klingon turns, this bottle, and so on. For that being said, thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you in the next episode.